Welcome to the webinar. If you're watching live or if you're watching afterwards, hopefully we'll be able to relay some information to you. We put this webinar together over the past couple of months really out of need, because right now all businesses are struggling and healthcare is no different than that. But one thing that we have learned is that all businesses have an opportunity to grow from this. In fact, businesses that have survived a crisis, a pandemic, or any other challenge which you're going to see in business tend to be very strong in the years that follow, and we're seeing that now. We're seeing a lot of chiropractic offices that are rebounding much stronger than they were pre-pandemic. We've talked to them, we've tried to find out what are they doing differently, and we've learned some things through the past decade of dealing with a lot of successful evidence-based chiropractors about what we can do to make our businesses stronger in a patient-centric way that fits your mission. We don't have all the answers, but we do have some advice. We promise that we'll be able to share something that you can use in your practice to make 2022 your strongest year ever. So thanks for joining us. We'll jump right into it.
So one thing that we had as far as suggestion from a webinar in the past was the ability to ask questions. So we have that available here. If you have any questions concerning this webinar or anything else, shoot them our way. And this is about really, the transfer of information. If there's something you like, you can put it in here. Otherwise, you can email us, tim@chirop.com and brandon@chirop.com. There we go. The first thing, as far as seeing patients, you have to be available. I know it sounds crazy. However, your schedule has to align with their schedule. Now, one of the interesting things that I saw with the pandemic is those patients that I saw at 7:30 in the morning every Monday started to come at 10 o'clock on Tuesday or 5 o'clock on a Thursday. So people's schedules have changed a touch. Your schedule needs to be accommodating that. And keep in mind that it's not always those 7 to 9 in the morning. When I first started practice, I could probably practice from 7 to 9 in the morning and do just fine. That's when everybody was getting up and going to work. As it turns out, people are no longer going to work these days.
Not as frequently, at least. But being available for those patients, and as those patients are going back into offices and are getting responsibilities that are time sensitive, we need to make sure that our schedules are time sensitive. We're very unlike a dentist or a primary care physician who you see once and you can make any accommodation. In fact, just yesterday, I had a patient who said, I'm so glad to learn you're here still at 6 in the evening, because I just wouldn't be able to come if I had to come in every day at 11 o'clock. He had come in periodically throughout his life, just if he'd need a tune-up here or there at 11 o'clock in the morning. He took off work. But now that he needs a care plan of being seen 6 or 8 visits, it wouldn't have happened if the hours weren't there. Our busiest times are absolutely at that 6:45 in the morning and again in the evening. One thing that's important to recognize is you can't do that every day and Saturday morning. You'll get burnt out and you'll start looking like Dr. Steele before long at all, just not caring anymore. But what we do know is that patients expect us to be there during those business hours. If you're working 3 12-hour days, you need to make sure that you have a couple afternoons or mornings that you're not there. And so when you're not there, they're expecting you to answer the phone. One thing that you might want to consider is a phone service. Now, not necessarily a service that you're paying someone to do it, but if you have a staff member who's willing to answer the phone, what we do is we use a service called eVoice. We have no relationship with them. There's lots of other options out there, and we're able to forward our phones to eVoice. eVoice then directs that patient through a voice messaging system. Are you a new patient who needs an appointment? Are you an existing patient who needs to schedule? Or are you someone else who needs some other information? If they're a new patient who needs an appointment, they get directed directly to that staff member who can put them on the schedule, and we don't lose new patients that way.
Also consider this isn't going to increase your overhead. You can pay a bonus based on that. So you don't tell someone they're going to pay X amount of dollars for that carrying that phone along. It is a hindrance. So you want to make it valuable to that employee, but you can incentivize opening that phone and making that appointment on their free time. So having a bonus built in, really everyone wins in that situation. Those patients who don't go directly to that person would now go on your voicemail, and you can give them a call next time you're in the office. Since you are out of the office, one of the things you should be doing is marketing yourself. One of the mistakes that I'll see happen frequently is people will attend anything, any event to get out and talk, whether it's on nutrition or rehab or talking to the 4-H club. Make sure that audience aligns with what you're trying to provide. Office that works a lot with rehab and athletes probably shouldn't be at the local Optimist Club where the average person is above 80. That's not a bad thing. If your practice is more wellness, maybe you should direct your efforts towards those groups, and don't have a generic presentation. That presentation should go along with that group to make it very easy and streamlined to see those future patients in their own comfort of their own club or venue.
And also the community involvement, that everybody is looking for people to help them with their special cause. So lots of organizations need volunteers, whether it be the Optimist or the Kiwanis, but more likely your kids' sports teams, your church, the choir, something that's a community involved service. And one thing that I learned early on is don't join all the clubs, because then you're just a deadbeat member. No club needs a deadbeat member. Every club's looking for that 80-20. The 20% of the people who are going to produce 80% of their outcomes. And that's what you want to be, in the 20. So pick a club that you can be active in, a cause that you believe in, and then get active. If you pick a club that's something that has a big group of potential patients, then that's a bonus for you as well. And it's a bonus because now you can deliver what's most important, probably the most important slide of the whole presentation, is the product you deliver.
People come to see you. I mean, obviously our practice is named Premier Rehab, but they really come to see mostly me. No, they come to see the chiropractor. So we have to make sure that we're delivering a product that they want. That product is usually a pain relief. It's a certain diagnosis they're looking to solve. And make sure when they come in your practice that you can recognize that and also give them the solution they're looking for. You can't get better at selling people what they don't want. If someone comes in with a shoulder problem, I don't need to sell them on orthotics and a supplement if it's not a part of that care plan. So give that quick, easy, pain relief, and then ask them what else they're looking for. It doesn't mean they're not interested in wellness or long-term care, but the reason they came in is we have to solve first, and then educate them on everything else you can provide for them. But don't try to confuse the two.
And if you do a good job, you get these. These come from one of our patients, Toots. She makes the greatest cookies. She gives them to us at the holiday season. I don't know if patients don't think we don't like cookies the rest of the year, but they all tend to show up around mid-December to late December. And Toots's cookies are awesome. If you don't get back to the office to the break room to pick one, they're going to be gone very quickly. We also have Tina, who brings us cookies. She's brought us cookies for 30 years now. Hers look like this, at least we think they do, because they haven't been opened in the past few years because we knew what the trend was. And the irony is that these two cookies, which were very different, started with a similar process. Both of these patients bought flour, they both bought sugar and butter, maybe identical. They both put them into an oven, one a little longer than the other, but they came out with a very different product. And that product is so similar to what we as chiropractors do, that we use similar things. In fact, one of my friends who's an MD said, you guys are like a Taco Bell. You have lettuce, you have tomato, you have ground beef, and you have tortilla shells. You just mix them up and call them something different. We have soft tissue manipulation. We have myofascial release and nerve mobilization and patient education. And we have a limited handful of tools. We mix them up, but mixing them up and that subtle recipe makes all the difference in our product. There's a big difference in cookies. There's a big difference between a taco and an enchilada. And there's a big difference in what you and I deliver to our patients on a regular basis.
That is the key to a Mexican restaurant. I mean, if you think about it, you have what, 7 different, different techniques, and different people turn them into a different product. I look at that as all those different techniques and all those different paradigms by which we treat are all great, but it really takes the integrator, the person who can decide the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. And don't look at it as what other people say you should be doing. Look at your own stats, and then you'll be able to figure out what you're doing well and where you're falling apart. A lot of times it's not necessarily you though. You can provide the best treatments, but if you don't educate your patients properly on what's going on, they can't help themselves. So when a patient comes in to see you, oh, did we miss one?
I don't think so.
Oh, there we go. We need to make sure we provide the best quality the care for that patient, because they're going to leave satisfied if they come with a problem and we can solve it. What we know from the research, what we know from the different kinds of surveys that go out, people like healthcare providers. So one-on-one relationship. But when it comes to chiropractic, we exceed their expectations on a regular basis. We're in the 90s as far as satisfaction. You don't see that in any other business. Our NPS scores on our satisfaction scores outrank everybody else. It's because we care. They have a problem, and we're looking to solve that with any mode possible.
And you're talking profession-wide at this point, but that last slide talks about the high level of patient satisfaction that comes out of chiropractic offices. The reason that we know that is the slide before that where you saw the stats per provider. We measure that for each provider within the ChiroUp network. So that provider knows what their patient satisfaction is per diagnosis, per patient, per condition. We don't know what any individual providers are, but we do know what our own. These are our stats here. Mine's slightly better than Dr. Steele's. That's why we put that one up. Maybe slightly worse, but one way or the other. What we do know is that the network of ChiroUp providers does have high patient satisfaction. This slide came from our COP synopsis, Clinical Outcomes and Patient Satisfaction, where we took 2 years of data, 665,000 patients, and determined that this network of ChiroUp providers is able to achieve such a high level of patient satisfaction, over 90% rated as excellent, 6.3% good, and then you see the fair and the poor, which are almost non-existent. It's something that all of you as subscribers can be proud of, and if you're not a subscriber, we'd love to have you on board if you believe in the same thing. One of the things that helps to get those outcomes is this, patient compliance, making sure that our patient understands what their role is in this process.
That's probably the hardest part, is that we know usually exactly what to do with the patient. However, it's up to us to educate the patient on exactly what we know. So if we have a patient that understands their condition just as well as we understand it, it makes everyone's job easier. If someone has impingement syndrome of the shoulder and every day you provide the best manipulation, the best myofascial release, you're giving them the best rehab exercises, but they go home and they sleep on their shoulder, you are peeing in the wind. Unfortunately, you have to have time for that. I think I had that as a blog title once. That you have to have a patient who understands their condition. The average person is going to understand about 10% of what you give them in the office. And if you think about how fast we talk with our patients and between ourselves, a lot of times we're talking over their head. So make sure you're giving them some kind of piece of advice and also some things to follow and about their diagnosis of what's going to happen with them going along this treatment plan of exactly what's going on in 6th grade language. Now, I live in Missouri. I think it's down to like the 3rd grade language, but we're in Illinois now. I think it might be 5th grade. And this is a big piece though, because they need to understand their condition. It's not just shoulder pain, it's rotator cuff strain. In fact, it could be a rotary cuff problem depending on which area of the country you're in. They need to understand what you're doing. When you're adjusting joints, when you're doing myofascial release, they need to understand what the purpose of that is and what exactly you're trying to accomplish, and also how long this is going to take. And this is a big piece of the puzzle, and you're fighting a perception that unfortunately haunts our practice. They think that most chiropractors see their patients for life, and I think you should, just not for the same condition. So for each specific condition, if you have a broken leg, guess what? It's 4 to 6 weeks. We have a prognosis based on the tissue injury. So if you want to really zero in on a prognosis, make your evaluation better, and you can really zero in how long it's going to take to get that person out of pain. Also consider those ancillary facts, the things that they do that unfortunately are maybe causing their problem, or at least exacerbating and causing it not to get better, the ADL modifications, and then get them moving. A lot of times diagnosis, we need to get it moving as far as in office. They need to keep it moving at home before we transition them into more stability stuff. Having it in an easy, digestible format. It could be print, it could be email, or an app formation or an app application on their phone to make sure they can read about their diagnosis, but they can also see what they should be doing at home to help themselves get out of pain.
Excellent. And you want to make sure that you answer the 4 essential questions that every new patient wants to know. What's wrong with me? What are you going to do to me? What do I need to do in this process? And how long is it going to take? So answer those verbally for the patient. And if you can reinforce that with something in writing, like the report that you gave as an example, it's all the better for patient compliance. One thing that we want to make sure that we're doing, I once heard a business consultant talk about revenue per square foot. So looking at each square foot of a business, and in that warehouse, is that square foot producing revenue, or is it essential to producing revenue? And we can do the same things in our practice. What's happening in the waiting room? What's happening in the front office? Well, once you do that, you realize there's only a couple of rooms that produce revenue. It's our treatment room, the exercise room, maybe the modality room, occasionally an x-ray room. And in those rooms, we need to make sure that we're maximizing what happens to the billing process. So for exercise reimbursement, exercises is one of those things that oftentimes can be reimbursed by an insurance carrier, by a third-party payer. When we do that, we can use one of 2 codes. The first one is this, 97110, therapeutic exercise. The second one that we can use is neuromuscular reeducation, 97112. I found that this one is harder to substantiate. It's more for a long-term rehab, a stroke type patient. So we use the exercise code. Don't forget that those are time-based. They're based upon 15 minutes, but based upon your area and your carrier specific regulations, you may be able to bill for that if you've reached the 50% mark. Now, we're not billing and coding experts anywhere, much less your jurisdiction. So you need to make sure through your state association and your regulations and carrier laws that it's okay to bill for that if you've hit at least the 50% mark. But in many areas, that is the case. Don't forget that as that goes up, if you go to 2 units, you have to get 1 full unit of 15 plus at least 7.5 minutes of the next unit to qualify for 2. The other thing that's important for reimbursement is that your note reflects why you are doing that rehab. We can't just prescribe exercises for the fun of it. We prescribe it because the patient had a subjective complaint that we substantiated through objective findings that their orthopedic test demonstrated specific ADL deficits like a forward head posture, like a scapular dyskinesis, like instability on a single leg squat test. And then our assessment documents that as well, that we're going to incorporate exercises to make them better, to help them with their activities of daily living. And finally, in the plan, that you document what you did, what type of exercises, and how long you did that. That'll help you with reimbursement and minimizing the recoupment process if those things aren't in the note. So don't forget, most of the time we can bill and be reimbursed quite well for therapeutic exercises if all the components are there, using the right codes and making sure that your documentation is solid in that regard.
So the and once again, you can ask any question on the webinar, and we're here to answer those, is what if their insurance doesn't pay for that exercise? My answer for that is very simple. Is it within that diagnosis? Is it what's best for the patient? Even if a patient's, you're not going to get reimbursed, maybe it's a Medicare patient, maybe it's a health insurance that doesn't pay for it, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be providing exercises. That's not a valid argument. The best practice for treating musculoskeletal conditions is manipulation, does a really good job. Manipulation plus mobilization or myofascial release does a better job. Manipulation plus myofascial release plus exercise does the best job. You don't have to do all of them. Some practices don't do all of them, and that's fine. You could be a master of just one of those and have a very successful practice. However, if you're looking to increase revenue, you need to start working into those other realms. And if you can do all those realms and you can do it very fast and document it appropriately, it's going to help with reimbursement. Here's one of the things that really kind of still makes me chuckle a little bit when I'm in practice. It's when someone comes in my office for cervicogenic headaches, and I hopefully can help them very fast or quickly. And then like, oh, you also treat rotator cuff syndrome? Like, yes, of course I do. And then I realized that it's a failure of my practice to educate my patients on what I do. So we use these in our office. They're just little rack cards. It's a little bit 1970s-ish, but we can see who started the practice. And unfortunately, we have to have some simple ways to educate our patients on what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. Rack cards do an amazing job of doing that. And a lot of times, yes, this is for your patient, but they're also going to pick those out of the rack, that little holder, and give it to their friends or their family. We also have in our waiting room a TV. In fact, we have 2 TVs, and we can have little blurbs, little jokes, but also explain other things that we treat in our practice when it comes to the elbow, or even what a disc problem is. Patients come into your practice with a perception of what their problem is. A lot of times we have to kind of weave in why that perception of arthritis doesn't mean a lifelong pain, that we have a solution for that. So the more tools you can use in your practice, the more educated your patients are.
One thing that I've noticed since we've started using the rack cards and the videos is I get less of those times where the patient comes in and says, well, I just finished 6 weeks of physical therapy for my rotator cuff. And I think, oh, why didn't you give me a chance? There's definitely been a downturn in that. So that's been a very positive benefit. And those are available if you're a Chiro subscriber. They're in the forms library. You can customize them, put your practice name on them, and use them in your practice, including the waiting room video, which we have monitors throughout the office that display that for patients to learn from. It's one of those wow moments, and the wow moments are the essential moments in that patient experience where you can really create a relationship, where you can let the patient know that you care about them and that you're going to help solve their problem. One of those is a welcome email, letting the patient know how much you appreciate that they've chosen you as their new provider. That's very much a personal relationship, so we reach out with a personal letter. The other things is some of the verbiage that you'll use at essential moments. One is after the consult. that after the patient tells you what's wrong, if you briefly repeat the OPP QRST back to them. So let me understand, Mary, you've had lower back pain, started 6 weeks ago, runs down your leg, gets better with ibuprofen, feels worse anytime that you sit in the car or cough or sneeze, haven't seen anybody else. If you go through that, a 30 to 60 second recap of what they've told you, the patient is blown away and it'll turn into one of your best referral tools. Second one is if you can't treat the patient after the first treatment, that we used to always wait until the second visit to treat the patient. Not many patients want that. Most patients want relief as quickly as possible. That's what we should deliver. So if we can treat the patient on visit 1, great. But there are times that we need an MRI and X-ray, some prior tests ordered. And in order to do that, we delay it. So then we tell the patient that we have a lot of good information here. We're going to sit down this evening, carefully look over the X-ray or the MRI, and get back together and explain what's wrong. We set an expectation that we're going to do something above and beyond, and that's the reason for the delay, that there's a real rationale why we're delaying that. Same thing with the report of findings, explaining those 4 essential questions we talked to earlier, as well as giving them some reinforcement from a written standpoint. And when that patient's ready to transition, if they're a patient who would benefit from supportive care, they're a high-level athlete, they're somebody who has advanced degeneration, and they need a periodic tune-up, letting them know we're done with active care at this point. If you elect to come back, I'm happy to take care of you. If you elect to do that, I'd recommend 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks, whatever is in the patient's best interest, to let them know that this is your option. We're not forcing you into anything. We delivered what you asked us to deliver. We met your goals. And now if you'd like to keep those going, we're here for you. And if not, we're here for you then too. And finally, that difficult conversation when the patient's not getting better. Look, we've treated you 6 times and your shoulder is no better. I don't think I'm the right provider for you. Although I'd like to tell you, let's try something different. I'm not sure that'll get it done either, but I'm going to help you find somebody who will get it done. Those are the patients who can't wait to get back. Those are wow moments that do make a difference.
I think this is one of those things that getting out in school, I never wanted a script. I always thought I'd be smart enough that I don't need a script. I don't need to memorize anything. I'll know what to say. And then eventually you're going to have a script. So after you see enough patients, you start to talk like, where did that even come from? One thing I would say is A/B test that a lot of times we'll have something that we know works really well. That doesn't mean there's not something that works even better. So whether it's going to transitioning somebody to supportive care or your report of findings, continually implement new things in your practice and see how it works. It doesn't mean it's going to always be better, but at least you tried that. The next thing is a post-treatment call. This is something that after every single new patient, or sometimes with an acute exacerbation after a re-exam, I'll call a patient and just have a quick phone call. Hey, this is Dr. Steele. You came in today. We had that headache. Did you have any questions of what's going on? How are you feeling today? Ask them questions about their experience and if there's anything we can do to improve that experience. And then also sometimes take some of the questions. Hey, I'm really sore. What's going on? And then you can be the sounding board for those comments instead of them left to infer what that problem may be. If you have any kind of loss in direct communication, they're always going to assume the worst. So get ahead of that with a post-treatment call.
Good. One other moment is their birthday, that a lot of patients get birthday cards up until they're about 14 years old. And after that, nobody remembers their birthday except immediate family. So that's a time that you can stand out to let them know, hey, we're part of the family and we appreciate you as a patient. And hopefully when they have had a good experience with a great product, you have enough hours open, they start to refer, which is almost every practice's #1 source of new patients. One of the things that's important is to make sure patients recognize you want new patients. That's easy when you're starting in practice. They look around at the waiting room and know you want new patients. But as you tend to get busier, all of a sudden they think, I'm going to displace my appointment if I refer somebody else, or doc's way too busy to take care of my friends or family members. So we keep signs around the office to let patients know we do appreciate referrals and we'll do our best to fit them in. The other thing that we do is we make sure that we reach out to that patient once they do refer to let them know. We'll have a note that we send to them. We will sometimes give them a gift, a referral gift, which again, you need to abide by the regulations. We don't want to give them a gift more than $15 or cumulatively more than $75 in the course of a year. We can't do that for Medicare patients, people who are federal beneficiaries, Medicare or Medicaid. But the other patients, we can give them a token of our appreciation, whether that be an insulated mug, a sweatshirt, something that's under $15, and we'll send them a card. We'll also give them a call, letting them know how much we appreciate the referral. Again, being careful not to use the patient's name when you're calling that referral in the evening, not to violate any HIPAA laws.
What's HIPAA?
I'll check it while you talk.
One other thing with any kind of handwritten note is the handwritten part of it. So it's great to have all this written on the note. However, at the very bottom, I'll always include in a different colored pen something special about that patient, about them. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, working with you or helping you out for the last 10 years, something like that, to help break away from this is just an automated card. Hey, the doctor looked at this and he actually put his signature on it.
The greatest compliment that a patient can give, as that sign said, is a referral, and it's really true. And the greatest indicator of how successful a business will be is the number of referrals it receives. If you have a business that is solely referral based, it's going to be around for a long time. There's a lot of good word about it. If you have to rely purely on external strategies after an extended period of time of being in business, there's probably something that needs to change about the product. So that's a good introspection look into what's happening. One thing that we know is that in general, patients love their chiropractors and they want to refer to them.
Which is amazing because we have this in Missouri. There's a service called Google. It's coming. It'll be to your state soon. But people can leave their opinion about you and put it out there into the internet. And this is a big thing because one, it keeps us transparent. Unfortunately, only the people who are very excited or very unsatisfied usually leave Google reviews. However, let's foster those. Let's take those people who are very excited and to say, hey, thanks for coming in. Provide them an opportunity, a platform to tell the world about how good a job you did. If you can do that, Google favors those kind of websites. So as you can see in our area, we're #1 because people like to see their chiropractor, and we do a fairly good job at treating them. Give them an opportunity to boost you up in that first page and to see more patients who have similar problems.
And the one thing that is important is to make sure, you, just like referrals, you ask for those Google reviews as well, because patients will want to please you. Sometimes they just don't think about it. Face it, we're all busy, and there's a dozen businesses right now that we could think of that we love. We probably haven't given them a review. But if the owner of that business asked for a review, you'd be much more likely. So we ask for reviews. We do it a number of ways. When we send the patient their initial report, we ask for a review. Would you be willing to review us on Google? If they don't review us at that point, we send them a survey 30 days later, which they get either way, asking them how much improvement. That's what powers the outcome stats that you saw earlier. And if they rate us as a 9 or 10 on Google, on their likelihood to refer, we automatically take them to Google to rate us online. And that's how we get ratings that bubble up. It's important to make sure that those ratings happen slowly and over time. You don't want a whole dump of reviews into 1 month because Google recognizes that it was probably somehow induced or fabricated. But if you can trickle one in every couple of weeks, that's when you start to bubble up in the SEO and make a big difference when a patient looks for a top chiropractor in their area or chiropractor in your town. And then the third time that we ask a patient for a review, if they haven't given one yet, is when they say something good, like, "Doc, I've never felt better. That shoulder pain is so much better." We'll ask them, "I'm really glad to hear that. And if you know of somebody else who would appreciate the same level of care, we'd be grateful." And the best way you can spread that message is a Google review. If you're willing to accept a quick text or email link, I'll send you a link that you can review me online. And then we can go into our system and send that out as well. So those are 3 opportunities that we actively pursue Google reviews. When you ask, you tend to receive.
The best part about those options is, as a provider, as a doctor, you don't have to do anything. You provide the condition report, you provide the diagnosis to your staff, everything else is automated. So making sure you provide the patient with the ability to review on the platform they're already on, meaning you can text it or you can email it, and then directly with 1 click, provide that Google review. It's not providing them with a link. They don't need to type anything on their phone. It's instant. The next part is people need to find you. If you don't have a website, you need one. If you're not getting Google reviews, you need to get some. Your website needs to be updated. It can't be done from 1980. It has to be searchable. Google doesn't look to see how pretty it is, but it has to load fast. It has to have your mission on it. It has to have what that patient's looking for, the proper keywords. If you're not a web developer, like we are not a web developer, find someone who can do this for you. Find someone who can put this together fast so your patients can communicate with you on a regular basis.
One of the things that's essential of the website or any website is that Google knows what kind of an experience the patient had once they clicked that link. If they have a bad experience with broken links or information that they skip through very quickly, you tend to bubble down in that search engine. But if you have information that the patient is interested in, they wanted to know about their back pain or their carpal tunnel syndrome, you had pertinent blogs that answered their questions. There were no broken links on your site. It was appealing and the patient stayed on the site. You'll tend to have a much better experience. The patient will have a better experience and you'll have a much better rating from that. One of the things that we'll talk about later, and we really don't need to talk about now so we don't waste your time, is right now ChiroUp's having a great special. We're going to let Becky tell you about that later on, but for now we know why you're here. It's how can you make your practice more potent, and that's what we'll deliver. One of the ways is to stay connected to the patient. That how often do you have that patient who comes in and says, you know, I saw a chiropractor in the past. I had this pain shooting down my leg and it was coming out my toe and my leg was weak and I was starting to pee myself and she adjusted me one time and I was fixed. And you think, why did you not go back to that chiropractor? They performed a miracle. And it's because that chiropractor didn't stay connected to that patient. So one way that we stay connected to patients is through an electronic newsletter that we send out an email newsletter to our patients on a monthly basis. That's all about them. We want to feed them with information that's valuable to them so that they continue to remember who to go to next time that that pain shoots down their leg. The other way we stay connected is here.
People tend to be on their phone a lot, so using social media will go a long way in just letting people know that you're still around. You're putting constant posts up there and just having your name or having your logo in front of their face on a regular basis. People hurt themselves all the time. They need to have that constant communication with you or your practice to make sure that they know that you're still around. Putting content up on a site is very difficult. It's not easy to do. It takes time, it takes energy. That's why whole professions were created in the early 2000s on how to create content to put on the internet. Make sure when you're doing that, you can provide some factual stuff on there, but you also need to provide some just simple stuff with, you know, what is elbow pain? What is a whiplash injury? Just educational pieces. Remember, social media is social. It doesn't mean that you have to, you know, click here to sign up now. We're running a special, you know, click here for your appointment. This is purely social information. It does not have to be anything more than that. It's informational. If they like it, they may follow it. If they like a lot of them, they're going to continue to follow your page and increase your viewership to your page.
And one of the ways that patients will be judging you is by your online presence. That absolutely, when that patient drives by a restaurant that has no cars out at Saturday night at 6 o'clock, they're not likely to be the first car to pull up for that meal. But if they go past a restaurant that's always crowded and bustling and it looks clean and they've got new signs all the time that have different messages, that's a restaurant that's alive. And the same thing happens in your practice. And while they can't necessarily drive by your office all the time or go into your waiting room to see what's happening, they're going to look online. Is your website up to date? Is the information recent? Was your last post 12 years ago or 12 months ago or 12 days ago? It tells them a lot about what your business is about and what you pay attention to. So make sure that you keep whatever mechanisms you employ, whether it be you choose to go with Facebook or an Instagram or a Twitter, make sure that you choose that platform and make it alive, as well as your website, keeping it alive. Now, sometimes, despite what you do, patients still drop out of care, and we have an opportunity to reactivate them. And right now, post-pandemic, or almost post-pandemic, maybe we're being optimistic, we're getting into a point that it's a great time for reactivation campaigns. So a recall is a patient who dropped off of their visit. We call them the next day or the next week and bring them back into the office. A reactivation is somebody who's been gone for a couple of months. They've really quit care, and we're going to bring them back into the office. One tool that we use for that is this Get Well card. That it's simply a note that we'll send out to anybody who was in between, not in the last 6 months, but was in within the last 3 years otherwise. We'll send them a card letting them know that we're still here and we'd be more than happy to take care of them. When you send these cards out, make sure that it's manageable. Don't send out 10,000 at a time if you have a large practice. Send out 100 or 2, because what's essential is that you have to make a follow-up call afterwards. The postcard by itself will be a nearly useless strategy. The postcard with a follow-up phone call is a tremendous strategy, and the postcard opens the door for that phone call. Just calling to see if you got the correspondence that we sent. Well, we're looking to see how you're feeling at this point in time. If you'd like to come back in, we have an appointment on Tuesday. Would that be helpful? The patients will welcome that opportunity. Staff members like that process because they get to reconnect with patients too, and they get a lot of good experiences from those prior patients. So don't forget the follow-up calls, and also don't try to do this during the downtimes, the natural downtimes. Don't try to fill up the end of December with reactivations or the very first week in January or around a holiday like Labor Day or Thanksgiving. Those are natural downtimes for a reason, and they're not good times to reactivate people. They're busy with lots of other stuff. Use your marketing, including reactivations, to pump up the good times. Don't try to level it out because you'll be wasting a lot of dollars trying to push up downtimes, which aren't easily pushed up. So don't forget the calls on the reactivations.
So speaking of keeping the good times good, one of the most interesting things that happened in 2020 is that our MD referrals skyrocketed. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't have hedged that bet. However, we were still open. We were still seeing patients. And we've seen a continuation of improvement in that relationship, even though we've not necessarily been going into their office. So let me explain how we started these relationships and then how it's grown over the years is having a good relationship with a medical doctor, but not just the medical doctor, the nurse practitioner, their staff, PAs, everyone involved in that office, whether they're patients or whether you're going to have a lunch with them, can refer to you. And it all comes down to them understanding what you do and getting great results. If you can do that and have a good reputation in your area, if you can forge a relationship with these people, it's really going to build your referrals and it's not going to allow for those downtimes. When it's January, when it's a Memorial Day, we're still busy because people are constantly in pain and they're seeing someone for that pain. And if it's not you, it's got to be someone else. And in our area, it's the medical doctors. They know as well as we know is that chiropractic is the best option for those patients. If you want non-surgical, non-pharmacological care, it's us. So we try to remove all the friction points to come see our office. When we go see a doctor, when I'm going to create this relationship, I don't send him an email. I don't drop off a flyer. Even that, I don't even drop off a big packet of information. I walk in there and I form the relationship and have a lunch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk into that office, which is a little bit nerve-wracking the first time you do it, but you schedule a lunch with the staff and the conversation goes like this. Hi, I'm Dr. Steele. I'm here to schedule lunch with Dr. Smith. We share a lot of patients and I like to get to know them. And just that, the person at the front desk probably is going to respond too well to that until the second part of this conversation is, hey, can I buy your staff lunch? He or she didn't hear the entire first part of your script. All they heard was free lunch. And they do this for pharmaceutical reps on a regular basis. So they'll have a calendar they're going to whip out, and then you're going to buy their staff lunch, and you're going to buy yourself 15 to 20 minutes to get to know that practitioner. Not every practitioner is going to be a good fit for you or you for them. However, a good portion are looking for the same common thing. They're looking to get their patients out of pain. When you go to have one of these lunch, you're going to schedule it and prepare. Make sure you have all those possible questions they could ask you in your folder, in your book bag, but don't have it out on the table with some big presentation. They don't need to know everything that you do and every designation behind your name and where you went to school and your GPA. They don't necessarily care about those things. What they do care is that you are able to get their patients in their office quickly. So have all these pieces of information ready. Probably the most important one is what insurances you take. They want to know that their patients aren't going to pay, or they're not going to be out of network when they see you, and that you can get their patients in quickly. It's not going to be 2 weeks. It's not going to be a month. You're going to get those patients in the next day or two or whenever they call.
Yeah, make them feel special. Don't forget it's a relationship. That in the same way you're not going to bring a sales binder or a power pitch slide to the first date that you go on, that shouldn't be the case here with your MD relationships either. That we want to know about them, and when it's time to deliver your message, you'll know when it's time. It's the last couple of minutes, letting them know why you're different and why you're interested in having that relationship for patient care. If you can bring your outcome statistics to those meetings, all gloves come off, because the only people who care about good outcomes are the only people who track outcomes are the people who care about good outcomes. So if you can say, here are my outcomes, when they say, what type of cases should I send you? Don't say everything, although that's what you want to say, everything musculoskeletal. Don't say that, because they're not going to buy into that. We need to take them one step from where they are, one step closer to understanding that there's a number of things that spinal manipulation and your care can make a difference in. If you have your outcome statistics, instantly they're very interested in seeing what those top outcomes are and starting to send you those patients along the way. So don't forget to take the outcomes along. One thing that we do is we go with lunches. Breakfasts and dinners don't tend to work. MDs are very busy. They're seeing patients, they're in hospitals, they're taking notes, just like you are. And so there's not a lot of free time with that, juggled with a family life and a social life. So we do lunches. It works really well. We'll set the lunch up. We have it catered. The catering works out. You don't necessarily want to be dragging the lunch in yourself. That's something that tends to not work so well. So if you can find a good catering company in your area that can bring lunch and something unique, like the one we use brings these special pieces of cake, and they're a bakery. They have awesome cake. So we're remembered from that, and people look forward to having us back next time. Probably what's more important after that initial relationship is to keep that relationship going. And there are two incredible tools that you can use during the pandemic, after the pandemic, for a long period of time thereafter that make that happen. And that is letting the provider know when a patient sees you what's wrong. We do an initial report summary that, you know, when you order notes from the emergency department after an auto accident, you have 40 pages of nonsense that you're looking for 4 paragraphs that matter. The MD is the same way. They're not going to read your SOAP note. They know that it was puked out by a system that had a whole bunch of macros. But what they will read is a quick synopsis of that. So we send along this MD initial report synopsis that says, thanks for your referral. Here's what's wrong. Here's what I'm going to do. And here's when I expect that to be resolved. What's more important than that is the release report. That MDs only see chiropractic failures for the most part, and we only see medical failures. If I asked you if inversion tables or muscle relaxants work, chances are you'd say no unless you had firsthand experience that they did. Well, both of those can work for lower back pain. In fact, there's some things that are proven by the literature. Unfortunately, we've not seen them because if they worked, the patient wouldn't have come to us. And the same thing is true of the primary care physician. They've not seen your successes. They didn't come by to say hi and drop off a $100 bill. The failures came by to see the primary care physician. So what we want to do is make sure the primary care physician sees all of your successes. And by sending a release report saying, remember this patient I told you about who had the disc lesion, I did treat them 9 times, they're 95% better, and I'm releasing them from care. That note paints a different picture. Can you imagine a world where every MD heard of every chiropractic success story? That world can happen, but it's going to take you making a difference, sending out that release report. And one of the things that we'd like to show you is how easily you can accomplish that. That all the things that we've talked about so far this morning, or most of the things I should say, are easily accommodated by one simple system. So if you're a ChiroUp subscriber, you know what it looks like. This is your dashboard. If a patient comes in, you're simply going to take a look for a patient. You're going to pick them out. If they're a new patient, you can drop in the name. And then what you're going to do is you're going to create an initial report for that patient. So to set up the patient takes all of about 4 seconds. To create a diagnosis and a report for that patient, you're going to select a region. You're going to select a diagnosis. So maybe this patient has a rotator cuff strain. And now the rest of this report has been filled out. We could customize any of it, but there's really no need to customize it. One thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is the MD initial report. So down here where it says healthcare provider, it'll have the patient's provider. If you'd like to see a preview of the report you're going to send, you can preview and edit that report to the MD. But essentially all that needs to happen is just hit the delivery button. So if we take that down to the bottom, we save whatever changes we've made, and then we can either print or email that. If we print this one, what you're going to see is the first page is the report that goes to the primary care physician. So this is a report that says, actually this first page is a synopsis that we can give our staff to teach the patient exercises. The second page is the report that goes to the primary care physician that says, here's what's wrong, here's what we're going to do to solve the problem, and here's how long we expect that to take. So that was done with one click once you establish the diagnosis. And this can be delivered to the primary care physician before the patient ever leaves your office. And then most essentially for the patient, those 4 questions that we need to answer. What's wrong? We can deliver that information in 6th grade language. What are you going to do with the types of treatments that you're going to employ? How long is that going to take? And what are the things that I need to do myself, including those ADLs? I always think back to a patient who came in on the 4th visit and said, I'm finally feeling better. I said, great, my care finally worked. And he said, no, my neighbor told me to quit sitting on my wallet. And I thought, why didn't I tell you to quit sitting on your wallet? That's what you were paying me for. And unfortunately, some of those things slip our mind. The good news is ChiroUp doesn't forget those things. The ADLs are there, but most importantly, the patient exercises are there so that they can watch video demonstrations of those exercises. So in a couple of clicks, we can deliver the information to educate the patient, empower them with exercises, empower the MD to understand what you're doing and encourage their referrals in the future. and automate that whole process to save time.
That's probably the best way to do it. We can also send MD newsletters, and I like this option. It shows the medical doctor that we're staying abreast of the current research, and also it puts our logo and our name on their desk on a monthly basis. So another great way, just like the social media post, you're not going to have the medical doctor instantly send someone to your office, but it's something to kind of refresh their memory about you in their office. The best part about medical doctor marketing is it looks exactly the same as attorney marketing. Meaning you need to create a list. It's so funny because people want to do marketing to medical doctors, attorneys, but they need to actually create a list of all the people in the area. An Excel spreadsheet, make it very simple with yourself. You're going to schedule a lunch and you're going to prepare a presentation. The presentation is an hour-long presentation on all the do's and don'ts of sending to a chiropractor. But no, it's having the same lunch, and it's having them understand what you can do for their patients, and also in the same respect, sending another newsletter. Don't use the same newsletter. In the same respect, just don't send the same newsletter to a dentist, to a primary care doctor, to an OBGYN. Use different kinds of letters that are really valuable to them. This isn't marketing. This is good doctoring. This is keeping them informed on what's going on in the world of manual therapy, and of course with ours, more spinal manipulation, and how that can be adjunctive to the care that they provide to their patients. Similar to what Dr. Berlesman said, is don't say you treat everything, but you also need to tell them what you do treat. And what I tell my patient or my medical doctors is, listen, if someone's moving and they can move and make it hurt worse, there's a good chance that I can help them. And if I can help them, I'm going to let you know. And if I can't, I'm going to let you know. So making sure you're very honest and candid with what you can do, and sometimes just as candid with what you can't do.
That's awesome. And the other thing that's important is to make sure that we focus our attention, that don't feel that your marketing plan has to include every strategy. It typically don't work. What does work is focusing on one target, that we can't hit 2 or 3 or 17, but we can do a really good job with one. So whatever strategy you choose to start with, make sure that you stick with it. I also often think of marketing as throwing mud at a wall, that a lot of times people throw mud at one wall and the next wall and the next wall, and all of them have a little bit of dirt on them. But if we throw mud at the same wall, we can cover that and make a difference. So make sure you're focusing your attention on one marketing campaign, the same way that you're focusing your attention in one club. And that's going to help you to scale. The most important thing is that when we do all of these things that are positive, our offices get busier. And when we get busier, we don't have time to do all those things that are positive. So we see this constant roller coaster. If you're on that roller coaster, chances are you need to find a way to scale your practice. And the way that we think about it is either automating, eliminating, or delegating. There are some essential components, making sure that your product is number one, that if you're the new person in the area, you're not the 100th chiropractor on the list. Make yourself the first by differentiating your product. Number two, make sure people know that your product is first, because you share your outcomes, you relay those messages to patients, you encourage patients to relay those messages on Google, you tell primary care physicians about your result, and you make your outcomes known. And number three, the ability to scale, the ability to turn this into a bigger practice as you go. One thing that is usually the limiting factor is the capacity of the clinic, that the capacity is determined by the number of staff you have, the space in the office, the equipment, and most importantly, how efficient you as a provider are. If you're spending all of your time with small tasks, you're not going to be able to turn that into a practice that's able to produce an income. That, yes, we want to be excellent clinicians first, but number two, we're also business owners. So we have to do that in a fairly quick and efficient fashion. So think of your capacity as your pot. Make sure that your pot is big enough to accommodate the plant that you want to grow in every aspect.
Keep in mind that in the current demographics is that unfortunately staffing is difficult. So understanding that your capacity may not be the capacity of your employees. So keeping in mind they may be really good at one thing and not so good at other things. We can't demand that our capacity should be everyone else's capacity. There's a great book that you gave me at the very beginning of our relationship that was You Can't Take a Duck to Eagle School. And a very simple book, but it kind of understands what you're great at and maybe necessarily what you're not great at.
We share that with all substandard employees. The other thing that we share with all employees and with all the providers is that we have a lot of balls to juggle as providers, that we're trying to manage our businesses, we're trying to market our businesses, we're trying to maintain our buildings, we're trying to take care of patients, and we're trying to have a life on top of that. So recognizing what you can get rid of, what you can eliminate from the practice. There are things that you don't need to do. That one time an employee came in 15 years ago and she said, do you realize that you really don't need to write all the checks out on the deposit slip? We had never thought of that before, and she brought new information to us. Now we don't have to do any of that, obviously, but it was new information saying we can eliminate this task. And I think one of the biggest eliminations is getting the electronics away from your treatment rooms. That keeping the phone in the room unless it's absolutely necessary is, for me, just a distraction to look at social media, to look at emails of things that don't need to happen. So for me, it allowed me to focus my energy in that room, focus my energy on the patients, and has been very helpful. The other thing is to delegate, recognizing that you're a $400, $500, $600, $700 an hour employee. And so you probably don't need to be doing $10 or $20 an hour tasks. What are the things that you can farm out to your staff to do? Are there things that you can farm out, like we have the bank pick up our deposits each day rather than us running to the bank? There are lots of things that we can delegate to the staff, and one of those things that we need to make sure of is that each staff knows exactly what's been delegated to them, so that you don't have to say it again and again at each staff meeting or every fifth staff meeting. We use task lists so the staff knows exactly what can be done for them, what's expected of them that day, and it helps to keep us on track with the automate, eliminate, and delegate.
And also, they have to initial each one of these on a weekly basis and turn them into us on the end of the week. And it keeps everybody accountable for getting all these things done. And unfortunately, if your windows aren't clean, if someone didn't vacuum, that looks poorly upon the entire practice. So everybody has to do their part to hopefully help us see the business grow. Automation. If you're doing something frequently throughout the day that can be automated with a program or a different person or some kind of system, make that happen. There's nobody with better capacity and the ability to earn than yourself. So take that data, take the information you're getting from your staff, from your patients, and from Chiro as far as the diagnoses, and try to make better decisions. One of the things that I hear very frequently is, how can I treat faster? How can I see more patients? And my response would be to evaluate faster. That is, don't waste time. Don't waste time doing A, B, C, D. Only do F and G, and you're going to get the same results. Also with charting and patient education, documentation is unfortunately a beast that we have to make sure that we do that. But if you're doing things over and over again, use macros. As far as your patient education, make sure that if you're saying how to perform a cervical retraction to each one of your patients, provide a video, provide a written documentation how to do that, so you're not getting that wrong information to the patient, and unfortunately they're not helping themselves get out of pain.
Yeah, we have one thing to sell, and sometimes it's a little product, but for the most part, it's our time. That's the only thing that we as providers really have to sell to patients. And saving a couple of seconds per patient makes a big difference. In fact, if you can save 20 seconds per office visit, at the end of the day, you've got a couple of extra office visits. Multiply that by your office visit average. You're going to find out what that time is worth by saving 20 seconds. And the things to really look at are these: the data collection, the charting, that's okay, and exercise and education. Those are things that can be automated. We can't automate manipulation. We can't automate myofascial release. We can automate the types of things we do with our voice and with our mouth, though. Our knowledge can be automated. So looking for good systems that help you accomplish that. Might know of one somewhere. The other one is looking at your overhead, that we all try to reduce our overhead. But what's important is to make sure you never reduce your overhead when it comes to buying seeds or fertilizer. That if you were running a farm, you'd constantly look for ways to make that farm more efficient. But make sure that you're not getting rid of seeds in that process, that identifying what's valuable and what's not valuable is essential. Do you really need a new fancier therapy machine? Probably not. Do you need something that can help your patient improve your patient retention or your patient education? Maybe that's something that is worthwhile. So we always look for ways to reduce the overhead, but don't get rid of the seeds. And probably most importantly,
just to go back one, I'm always curious when someone's talking about their practices and growing, so they're cutting back costs. I'm like, that's the absolute worst. You should be finding ways to spend money to put into a marketing machine. If you can spend $1 and get $2 back, if you can hire an employee that's going to help you grow your practice, make that investment. There's a lot of times where you shouldn't be scaling back. You should actually be growing and finding new systems to help your practice scale and change that. If you are looking to have a change in your practice, whatever it may be, some people want more time. Some people want more revenue. Some people want more research in their hands. Some people want a better way to practice. They want more automations. Do something different. It doesn't mean that we're all going to do something different. It means that if you want to make a change in your practice and you don't want it to look like that has in the years past, you have to incorporate something else. Very frequently when I talk in front of crowds, and I'm sure you get the same thing, is someone will come up to me like, whoa, I can't do else. I'm like, don't change everything that you're doing. If you are doing something and you have a cohort of people coming in to see you, they like what you're doing, but that doesn't mean you can remain static. It means you can always improve. Don't change everything you do, but change a couple things you do on a monthly basis. A new myofascial release, a new set of exercise, a new way to do accounting, a new phone system, a new way to do MD marketing. Try new things frequently and you'll be surprised at the results. Some may not work. Don't get frustrated. Not everything works. However, you may find that one or two things that helps build your practice for the future.
Excellent. And then finally, if you're looking to connect with other chiropractors who are doing something different, ChiroUp Finder is a great way to accomplish that. That ChiroUp network has now created Chiro Finders so that all of the providers, 2,200 providers, are able to refer to each other as well. So that's something that's an added bonus, and you're able to find other like-minded people who are interested in something that can make a difference in their patients' lives, in their patient outcomes, their patient satisfaction, and their practices as well. And if you're interested in being one of the providers in our network, I'd like to have Becky give you a little bit of a heads up what that entails. If you have questions for us, by all means, shoot them to us, and Becky will be able to answer everything else.
Thanks, Dr. B. So my name is Becky. I'm not a chiropractor. That's why we leave all the clinical information to Dr. Bertelsman and Dr. Steele. But I've seen what ChiroUp can do for clinics around the world, and I want to invite you guys to try it out for yourselves. So if you're looking to improve clinical outcomes, increase referrals, generate more income into your office, and really become the top provider of choice in your area, why not try out ChiroUp? You love our clinical information. All of the resources that Dr. Bertelsman and Dr. Steele highlighted today are available to our subscribers in our ChiroUp platform. So make this your year to join our global network of ChiroUp subscribers. It's especially great now because we are offering that New Year special for only a few more days. We extended it out because we had such an awesome response to it. You'll get $50 a month off of your subscription level. No contracts or obligations. Try it out. If we've ever piqued your interest before, if you've ever thought, hey, I want to take a look at ChiroUp and see what it can do for me, now's your time to do it. Head to chiroup.com. Click on try for free. It really is free. All we need is your name, your email address, and you'll be able to access all of the resources that you saw today. I invite you to try it out. You'll have 14 days to take a look at it. I'll get in touch with you. We'll take you through a demo, and you'll be so happy that you did. I hope to chat with you soon.
Thank you, everybody, for staying on. And if you have any questions, we're going to close out the chat. However, you can email us if you want any kind of answers clinically or business related or related to this webinar, Brandon, BRANDON, @chiroup.com.
And if you have any questions about joining ChiroUp, contact me, Becky, BECKI, @chiroup.com.
Thank you.